It is one of the largest known impact craters on Earth. At 180 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep, it's big enough to swallow up London whole. But the fact that it's found here in the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, rather than somewhere like downtown London, is probably for the best. That's because around 66 million years ago, this crater didn't just appear. Something smashed into it, something big. The asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. Now, you've probably seen images of this crater before, but we're going to show it to you again, because it's worth bearing in mind how unimaginably large this thing is. It was named the Chicxulub crater after a nearby fishing village, and it was only discovered in 1908. And at first, scientists thought it might have been formed by a volcano. But now we know for a fact that it was caused by an asteroid, one that exploded with the force of 40 trillion tons of TNT and obliterated everything for miles around. The impact unleashed a shock wave that spread across the planet, triggering massive earthquakes and giant tsunami waves. Now, although this was the main event, so to speak, the worst was yet to come. As huge amounts of dust were thrown into the atmosphere, they circled the globe, blocking out the sun and plunging the planet into a long-lasting winter. But let's start at the beginning. First, the impact itself. If you've watched any other videos about this, then you've probably heard the sound before, the airburst. Basically, when the asteroid hit, it blew itself and the surrounding rock to smithereens. This would have been thousands of times more powerful than the most advanced nuclear weapon ever detonated. In fact, the Hiroshima atomic bomb was around 60,000 times less powerful than just 1 second of the asteroid impact. So what would actually happen if you fell into the crater? Well, firstly, there wouldn't be much time to think about it because the asteroid was traveling at a speed of 17 kilometers per second. That means that from the moment it made contact with the Earth until it was completely obliterated, the entire event would have lasted no more than an hour. Within seconds, you'd have been vaporized by the heat, which reached 3,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt rock and burn through anything in its path. And then there was the light. The fireball from the explosion would have been so bright that it could be seen thousands of kilometers away. People would have looked up into the sky and seen the sun go out, only for it to be replaced by an even brighter white light as the dust and debris from the impact lit up. In the immediate aftermath, the air around you would have been filled with pulverized rock and dust, along with molten rock and metal fragments. You'd be inhaling tiny particles of iron and other elements, all while intense heat and sound waves slammed into your body, crushing your bones and rupturing your organs. Tsunamis would immediately begin to form as the water was displaced by the impact. These would reach heights of up to 100 meters as they spread outwards in all directions. They would travel at speeds of over 800 kilometers per hour, hitting coastlines with devastating force. Entire cities would be wiped off the map, leaving behind only rubble and corpses. Those who survived the initial impact wouldn't survive for long. In the hours that followed, the world experienced total darkness as a thick dust cloud rose into the sky and began to spread across the planet. Plants would immediately begin to die as photosynthesis was cut short. Animals would soon follow. The world had entered a new ice age. Over the next several years, the dust continued to block out the sun, preventing any substantial amount of heat from reaching the surface. Temperatures plummeted and snow fell everywhere. Summer as you know it ceased to exist. Every month was December. Let's take a closer look at the tsunamis now, because these things were absolutely enormous. They struck the Yucatan Peninsula first, where waves up to 100 meters high crashed into the shore, moving inland for miles. Coastal areas were completely obliterated. Then the waves headed out to sea, where they kept their strength, hitting any land they came across. As the waves spread out, they lost some of their height, but still caused devastation wherever they touched down. Some areas were hit multiple times by waves that came from different directions. There wasn't anywhere on Earth that was safe. The waves eventually reached every corner of the globe, killing everything in their path. The asteroid's impact also triggered landslides and debris flows, which added to the destruction. These were as high as 300 meters, and they roared down mountainsides at speeds of 80 kilometers per hour, destroying everything in their path. They carved giant scars into the landscape as they thundered through valleys and over plains. Let's talk about those earthquakes now. There was absolutely no escaping them. Whether you were outside or hiding inside a cave, the tremors would have rocked the earth and caused buildings to collapse. Aftershocks would continue for weeks or months, keeping everyone on edge. The initial earthquake that occurred at the moment of impact registered a shocking 7.6 on the Richter scale. That's equivalent to around 500 of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded. People would have felt the ground shake beneath their feet and watched in horror as the earth split apart. The vibrations from the quake were so powerful that they encircled the globe 3 times in 24 hours. Then, there was the immediate danger. As the ground shook, rocks would have fallen from cliffs and mountainsides. Landslides would have occurred and people would have been crushed to death as buildings collapsed. The asteroid impact had global consequences, causing earthquakes and tsunamis all over the world. The earthquake waves spread out from the impact site, causing tremors that were felt thousands of kilometers away. Aftershocks continued for months, rattling the foundations of civilization. Cities and towns were leveled, their inhabitants either drowned in the giant tsunami waves or crushed under the rubble of their collapsing homes. The asteroid's impact not only wiped out life on land, but also in the oceans. As the dust cloud rose into the sky, it blocked out the sun, plunging the planet into darkness. Photosynthesis came to a halt, and plants began to die. Without sunlight, the world's food supply was quickly decimated. The ocean's phytoplankton, which relied on sunlight for energy, died off in mass, leading to the collapse of the marine food chain. Larger animals, such as whales and sharks, died as they ran out of food. In the months that followed, the surface temperature of the Earth dropped by several degrees. The ice caps began to advance, covering vast areas of land in ice and snow. As the dust continued to block out the sun, temperatures plummeted even further. What followed was the coldest period in Earth's history. Winter lasted for years, perhaps even decades. Civilization as we knew it couldn't last in these conditions. The asteroid impact caused widespread famine and mass extinctions. Humans and many other species simply couldn't survive without the sun. Crops failed and food became scarce. People were forced to resort to eating their pets and livestock just to survive. Cities were abandoned as people fled to rural areas in search of food. But there was no escape from the cold. The winter continued relentlessly, day after day, week after week. People huddled around fires trying to keep warm, but the endless snow made it impossible to gather enough fuel. Even the animals couldn't survive the harsh conditions. Birds flew south in search of warmth, but they never returned. Mammals that hadn't gone extinct huddled together in groups trying to stay alive. But it was no use. The winter was too long and too cold. As the months passed, more and more animals died until only a few stragglers remained. The asteroid impact had a devastating effect on the environment. Plants and animals died in mass, causing widespread extinctions. The dust cloud that blocked out the sun led to an ice age and the end of civilization as we knew it. Humans and many other species simply couldn't survive in these conditions. But after the impact, something incredible happened. Life found a way to survive. Mammals and birds that had gone extinct re-evolved and populated the Earth once again. New species evolved to fill the gaps left by the old ones. It took millions of years, but eventually the Earth recovered from the impact. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs also gave rise to a new world, one that we are lucky enough to live in today. Now you need to watch What If the Earth Stopped Spinning? Or have a look at this.